Well, my friends, yes, it's true, and there's evidence. Barack Obama is indeed twice as smart as George W. Bush, because it took 6 years for Bush to fall to 39%, but Obama has done it in 2.5. But you don't get into the 30s without losing a fair portion of your base, and the reason, if reason is a word that can be applied here, that the president is losing his base is, well, it's hilarious. Let's bring in our stalwart Scott Ott from Allentown, Pennsylvania, and Steve Green from Denver, Colorado, to help explain the unexplainable, or at least giggle at the absurd. Guys, good to see you. Scotty, when Americans are asked to self-identify, conservatives outnumber liberals by 2 to 1 in this country, but all across this great wide land, we are hearing from liberals that Barack Obama is losing popularity because he is not liberal enough. Now, if Senator Obama got a score of 4 out of a possible 100 on the conservatometer, what would the country be looking like now if he'd been a 1 or a 2?
Well, you got to give him credit for one thing. He's bringing us together. He is a uniter, not a divider. We have come together, far right and far left, in agreement that this man has to go, that this man can no longer remain president of the United States. So we've got to give him that much. It is kind of bizarre to watch, though. This guy's complete and utter meltdown, not even able to hold on to his own base.
I cry.
Yeah, if I could throw something in real quick. There are no red states, there are no blue states. Well, no, there just aren't any blue states, not many.
Well, Stevie, let's go to you. The numbers for the most liberal senator ever really started to tank in the fight for Obamacare. Now a court has recently ruled again that the signature liberal achievement has been ruled unconstitutional. Was it, as the liberals like to claim, just not enough of a money and power grab? If they'd only grab more power and more money, everybody would love this idea?
Yeah, and this time it was by an appeals court. That's the first time that's happened. It's a big step. But you know what? It's not any of that. Obamacare, it's going to turn into single payer as soon as the insurance companies go bust and business after business kicks people off the private insurer rolls and onto the government dole. But the hardcore left is upset that it'll happen over a few years instead of yesterday. You give these people an inch and they will demand a mile out of you. Paul Krugman says the stimulus, almost $1 trillion, it wasn't big enough. Government spending is up just 23%, or up 23% in just Obama's first 2 years. And that's not enough spending. So what is enough? Well, you know, it's when everything that isn't mandatory is forbidden. That's the end game. Progressive politics. It's nothing more than feudalism dressed up in a doctorate degree in political science.
It's still not pretty. Scotty, Barack Obama used Keynesian economics. There are only 2 or 3 Keynesians left out there outside of North Korea to justify massive spending programs like the stimulus. Now, when the stimulus failed to stimulate, by the way, history will rename it the stagnatulus, liberals claim that we weren't spending enough. There's always been the claim of these reality deniers, isn't it? It didn't happen. It didn't fail because it was a bad idea. We just didn't do enough of the bad idea to turn it into a good idea.
Well, it's funny because I was reading a book that is a bunch of Ronald Reagan's own writings, in his own hand, actually, is the title of the book. And he was talking back then of how the Federal Department of Education had expanded spending by something like a factor of 400%, and yet the results weren't coming out any differently. And he was saying then, they're making the argument that it's just because we haven't spent enough money. It's a beautiful argument because there's no end to it. As long as something's failing, it just means you haven't spent enough.
That's right.
And you can continue to spend it will never succeed, but you can always claim that you just need more money.
And I'll go further. Communists believe that the communist revolution didn't succeed because they didn't murder enough millions of people. If they'd only gotten to 100 million in Russia instead of 50 million of those bitter clingers, undoubtedly the workers' paradise would have come for the survivors. Steve, I'm not so much interested in the president's plummeting numbers as I am in this idea that these idiots can't see the forest for the trees. They can't see forest or trees, either of them, with entire nations, entire continents now, drowning under rising oceans of red ink. What is it about our moral and intellectual betters in the reality-based community that is so resistant to reality?
They mean well.
There you go.
Can't you see? Yeah. Obama was just out on the stump this week on that magical misery tour, and he said, and I think this is a quote, "I have no problem with folks saying ObamaCare. It's Obama cares. I do care. He cares. Doesn't matter that he's ruining healthcare or strangling job creation or creating more banks that are too big to fail. He cares. And you know what? Mean old conservatives might create jobs or create enough wealth to pay taxes, but they don't care. They're mean. Results are no indicator of a person's inner nobility. Intention is reality, Bill.
That's it, buddy. That's just that simple. Well, Scotty, earlier this year, there were calls to draft Tom Hanks as the new improved unicorn after the current one started to develop a few magic troubles. Now we hear rumblings from Michael Moore and others that maybe Matt Damon is the savior.
Matt Damon.
Yeah, Matt Damon. Because, look, that's really what it is, isn't it? It's a search for redemption of magical ideas by a messiah whose non-appearance allows them to cling to the fantasy that makes them feel good about their power-grabbing, delusional selves.
You know, this is like somebody in Hollywood who writes a script for a movie and he finally sells it and he's very excited and it goes into production and the movie comes out and it tanks. And he's sitting around over drinks with his buddies saying, it's because they cast that guy in the lead. He blew every line that I gave him. He screwed up. And that's the problem with these guys. They finally cast this one that they thought was going to be a great actor. Now they're fishing for another actor. By the way, if they get Matt Damon, we're getting Bruce Willis.
Well, if they cast Matt Damon and run him as the president of the United States, then I say in the spirit of Hollywood, his vice president should be a talking dog that drops witty bon mots at the slightest opportunity in kind of a roughy little accent. Scott Ott's new series on the Constitutional, Blow Your Socks Off. You can look for it here at PJTV starting very soon. Steve, let me put this in terms that you can connect to instantly. These idiots say that the liberal policies and politicians are failing because they're not liberal enough. So my question to you is, how much do you have to drink and how fast in order to sober up?
Oh, God, I wish this was bourbon.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know if you ever read The Fountainhead. You should, but the bad guy, the man trying to bring socialism to America, was Ellsworth Toohey, and he gets this great monologue near the end where he spells it all out, the whole plan. And I'll never forget one part where he admitted he doesn't expect to find any pleasure in his perfect socialist state. He doesn't expect to enjoy his power. He just wants it, no matter what the results are. You know, that was written in 1943, and nothing's changed. They know the end game, and they want it anyway.
Well said. Now, if you can't wait for Steve Green's next segment, you go to vodkapundit.com so you can read him whilst you watch Trifecta. You know, when the progressives first coined the term reality-based community back in the Bush years, I thought it was a perfect term for them, actually. Arrogant, condescending, smug, self-satisfied, narcissistic, inflexible, fatuous, stupid, and wrong. I don't know what neurosis or lack of parental affection makes these mediocre and not-so-bright power grabbers and petty despots so desperate to show everyone else how smart and morally evolved they are, but they got their unicorn and their Senate and their House too, and everything that they did made things immeasurably worse, and everybody knows it. They tell themselves the American people love them and their policies, but they will chew through concrete to avoid being termed a tax and spend liberal, even though they think salvation lies in taxing more and spending more and being more liberal. But the term reality-based community is actually perfect for them because ultimately it describes the trap that they've made for themselves, because their little community of ideas and policies are, in fact, based here in the real world. And the real world is an environment that shows daily that these policies cannot survive contact with reality. For the entire Trifecta team, I'm Bill Whittle.